Making the decision to stop drinking is just the start. Getting your mindset right, feeling motivated and staying on track is the journey, and understanding who you really are and living a happy, peaceful and calm life is the outcome. And it's a wonderful outcome, but it's important to make sure that we don't get derailed along the way. And as a sobriety coach, I often work with people who've gone back to drinking after taking a break, and they wonder why they had that setback. And we explore it together before things finally click and they get right back on track. And hopefully they never drink again. They lead an alcohol-free life with the right mindset and the right motivation. But there are so many things that can cause us to go back to drinking, and it's important to keep our guard up and to be aware of the pitfalls. And in this video, we're going to look at 10 things that can send you back to drinking. The first thing to watch out for is withdrawals, cravings, and fantasising about alcohol. It's one of the most common things that send people back to drinking. In the early stages after you quit, it's common to be thinking about alcohol almost all of the time. Not long after I quit, I was thinking about alcohol every few minutes, wishing that I could have it, feeling sorry for myself. And even as the weeks and the months began to pass, there were times when I found myself fantasizing about how good my life was when I had alcohol, which was completely false because it wasn't good. Otherwise, I would never have made the decision to quit in the first place. It was so important to remind myself of why I started this journey, what was so bad about my drinking life, what I was putting alcohol in front of, all the important things in my life that weren't so important when alcohol was around. Withdrawals can be challenging. If they're physical withdrawals, they may need medical attention. But for most of us, it's psychological withdrawals. And it's all about becoming mindful, staying aware of the thoughts and learning new practices and strategies to navigate our way through them. And there's a ton of videos on my channel that will help you through that. The second thing that can make people go back to drinking is people. Yes, it's as simple as that. I'm a big believer that what we put out into the world is a direct reflection of what's going on within ourselves. And we tend to surround ourselves with people who engage in the same behaviour. They advocate the same behaviour. So if we're heavy drinkers or we're doing things that go against our values, we'll find that we tend to surround ourselves with people who share those same behaviour traits. And that can be damaging. And when we quit drinking, sometimes we need to evaluate exactly who we share our lives with and who we're allowing to come into our lives. There's no doubt that you'll probably lose one or two friends along the way, but you'll attract many more friends in the alcohol-free community. That was absolutely the case for me. I had some friends where our relationship was glued together by alcohol, and I realised after I quit that other than booze, we simply had nothing in common. And those friendships kind of faded away. We drifted apart, but I made so many new friendships, and they were true, honest and authentic connections with some amazing people. So it's important to set boundaries about the type of people you want in your life. You don't want people who are going to encourage you to drink, people who are going to happily enable you without challenging you if you start fantasizing about alcohol. I'm sure you'd prefer somebody that you could be accountable to, and who, if you said that you fancied a drink, would challenge you and ask you why and remind you of all the reasons that you're doing this in the first place. The third thing that can send people back to drinking is the underlying issues, the roots of the problem. Now, I'm a firm believer that every type of addictive behaviour is simply the effect. It's not the cause. The cause is usually far deeper and relates to things like toxic shame, childhood trauma, PTSD, anxiety, depression, and possibly other mental health issues. And it's really, really important that once we've removed alcohol from our life, we adopt a mindful approach and start understanding who we really are and what is at the root of the problem. And many people come into this journey and they don't expect that they're going to need to dig so deep and they're going to need to go so far inwards and really start understanding themselves and addressing perhaps some of the really challenging stuff that they've never wanted to face into before. But without alcohol as a coping mechanism or a false type of armour that protects us against ourselves, We have no choice but to look closer at who we are and what it is that's been causing us to carry out destructive or negative behaviours in our lives. It's actually one of the most wonderful things that you can do. It clears the way, it clears the path so that you can move forward with your life without staying stuck and without being held back, usually by historical things that are still causing problems in adult life. So ripping up those roots is the most amazing thing that you can do. You might want to read my book, How to Heal Your Inner Child, as it speaks to a lot of this stuff and will help you get to grips with really dealing with what's at the heart of the problem. The fourth thing to look at is the places that we go to. If you quit drinking and you continue visiting the same pub that you used to go to every single night and thinking that it'll be okay to sit in the corner with a Coke instead of drinking alcohol while your friends are sat there necking pints of beer, then you're probably going to run into a problem. Whereas if you find new places to go and if you engage in places that really align with your values, that make you feel good about yourselves and invite joy into your life, then you're not going to have a problem. So do an evaluation of the places that you go and make sure you watch out for anywhere that might be triggering. And of course, you might return to places where you used to drink. You might go to a restaurant where you got drunk once and it might bring up some triggers. So it's always important to keep your guard up and also to always think in advance about where you're going and what you're engaging in. I always have an exit strategy. If I find myself at a social event or in a situation and I realise that I don't want to be there, I always make sure I can leave. And that's one of the best tips. It's served me so well on my alcohol-free journey, knowing that I can always leave. I can always exit this place if I want to. The fifth thing that leads many people back to drinking is having a poor self-care routine. I did a video recently that talked about the importance of having a sobriety routine. For me, it involves meditating every single morning, walking in nature, doing some kind of exercise, making sure I have breakfast, lunch and dinner, making sure I have my vitamins and fish oil, all the things that I know help me, help my mind and help my body. So take the time to think about your self-care routine. What is it that you need? Is it a lovely bath every evening with candles and bubbles? Maybe a small tub of ice cream to treat yourself? Maybe a massage once a week? Whatever it is, get clear on it, get it down in your journal and pay attention to it. Now, you may have just seen the light move across the screen. We moved into this house about a year ago and it used to be a care home, and unfortunately I think some people passed away here, and we have had some experiences with some ghostly goings on, and I often see orbs and floating things around the house, particularly on camera, and you might have just seen one go past. If you rewind the video about 20 seconds you'll probably see it, but there's a little interesting addition to the video today. The sixth thing that can cause people to go back to drinking is a lack of self-awareness and a lack of mindfulness. And mindfulness is really just being aware of yourself, taking the time to pay attention to how you're feeling, what's really going on. And your journal can be your best friend when you're wanting to pay attention to how you really feel. So take the time to get really mindful. Spend some time to reflect on how you felt, why you behaved in a particular way, and try and understand yourself better. The more you can understand yourself, the more you're going to understand what you need. When you understand what you need, you can meet your own needs, and you can meet those needs without alcohol. The next thing that can trip people up is overconfidence. They get a few months into their alcohol-free journey and they start to think that it wasn't that bad after all. I'm fine, I can just have one drink. I've got this, I'm in control. And of course, that's not the case. For me, I know that one drink would be back to a lifetime of addiction, and I've seen it happen for many, many people. So it's really important to keep our guard up, to constantly remind ourselves of why we're here, why we're on the journey, and what life was really like when we were drinking, because then we're never going to want to put that poison in our mouths again. Why would we if we're clear about how it was destroying our lives? The eighth thing that can trip people up is boredom. We find ourselves with time on our hands when we quit drinking, and it's really, really important to use that time to do the things that bring us joy. I see many people rediscover the hobbies, the activities that they used to do when they were younger, that lit them up, that brought so much happiness into their lives. Maybe it was art or crafts or playing an instrument, whatever it might be. They go back, they rediscover it, and then they fill the time. They're no longer bored. And many people connect with nature. They connect with others. They might go out walking. They might join groups. Whatever it is, you need to take the time to make sure that you're filling those gaps. Now, that's not to say that boredom's a completely bad thing. And in fact, we can come up with some of our best ideas and get really creative at the times when we're bored. But if boredom is starting to trigger feelings and thoughts about drinking, then make sure you're using that time wisely, because it can be easy to spiral into a place where you're bored, then you feel lonely, and before you know it, you're thinking that alcohol will solve the problem, which it won't. The next thing that can lead people back to drinking is uncomfortable emotions. Now, I talked earlier about getting to the root of the problem, and those uncomfortable emotions usually come up off the back of that. So there might be feelings of anger or sadness that previously have been pushed down and then blotted out by drinking. Without alcohol, we need to deal with these feelings. We need to look closer at what's really going on. Maybe there's resentment coming up, frustration, whatever it might be. Use the emotion wheel that's on the screen now, and you can get really clear about exactly how you feel, and then you can take steps to do something about it. If you feel lonely, the opposite of loneliness is connectedness. You probably need to go and meet a friend for a coffee. If you feel angry, well, the opposite of angry is calm and relaxed. You probably need to do something that's going to send you in that right direction. So take the time to explore how you really feel and get really, really clear on it. And the 10th thing that can lead people back to drinking is relationships and intimacy. And it's really important to carefully manage our relationships. For many people, when they're drinking, the relationships can become kind of glued together by alcohol. And often there's a disconnectedness. Even though we feel connected by alcohol, there's a real disconnectedness where we're not talking, we're not sharing intimately with our partners. When we quit drinking, it's all about starting to open up. Intimacy is into me see, allowing your partner to see into you by sharing and being open and vulnerable. When you do that, you take one step closer to being completely connected. And if you're completely connected, you can share without fear. Your partner will have your back, and you'll both start to understand each other better. Whereas if you're not talking and you're not sharing what's coming up for you in your experience, how can you expect your partner to understand you? They're not a mind reader. Even though sometimes we think they are, they're not mind readers. So it's really important to talk to our partners, to open up, to become vulnerable, to ask for what we need, but understanding that we won't always get what we want. And there can be other issues in relationships too, like sober sex and insecurities that come up and fears that we have. So make sure you're speaking to your partner. Even when it feels really uncomfortable, try and avoid holding it inside. The more open and the more vulnerable you are, the better things are going to be for you and the more connected you're going to feel. You're going to wash away any feelings of resentment or anger that come up. So that gives you 10 things that can lead people back to drinking. And believe me, I've seen all of those in people who are in my stop drinking program and people that I've worked with, and they can all be overcome. The first thing is being aware of them, and then you can do something about it. And there's a video right next to me that will help you even more on this journey. You can click on that next and watch it straight away, and I'll see you again on the next video very, very soon.